Lutz Mercedes strategy or Daimler-Benz strategy results in doom versus Tesla and potentially bankruptcy. This is great for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Wanted to also thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. Your support makes a huge difference. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So we did a show, or we re-aired a show a month ago regarding the fact that we thought that the Model 3 would bankrupt a number of companies around the world. And now we sort of have to update that a little bit to just say Model 3/Model Y will get the job done. And we just got a piece of news that allowed us to sort of step back into this discussion in an authoritative way, and therefore the show that we're doing this afternoon. It's Saturday, the 25th, 2020. So what we're focused on is the fact that it was just announced, or over the last few days, we actually did a show on the fact that only 58 of the EQCs actually sold in Europe, or I believe in Germany. And so we're kind of stunned by that number because it seems so low, given that Daimler's a huge company and there's no way you can get to break even if you're selling that few cars, especially in your home market. So what this kind of brought up for us is a reminder of a conversation sort of Bob Lutz had maybe 3 years ago. During that conversation, what he explained was that their first strategy when it came to Tesla was to try to bankrupt them by coming out with the Bolt and selling it about $10,000 under. And their objective was to sort of snag buyers and potentially put Tesla out of business with the vehicle. But we've seen how those Bolt sales have gone when it came to Tesla. The second strategy component he talked about was that they actually did a process where they had decided that they would produce a vehicle as low cost as they could, with the goal being to appease the environmentalist groups and sort of find a vehicle that was in the price range that might fit the pocketbooks of environmentally oriented folks. And so clearly that didn't work out. Lutz recently articulated the fact that that was an error because there are wealthy people who want to drive electric vehicles. And by doing an expensive vehicle, you truly showed the potential of electric vehicles while doing so. I was also intrigued because Elon Musk had a comment on that, because one of the strategy components that Tesla worked on in the early days was an effort to take a Toyota Scion and to stuff batteries in it and create what he thought was going to be an $80,000 vehicle, but it turns out that it was there were some errors there, and he had to fire the CEO because it turned out that it would have been a Scion stuffed with batteries that would cost $200,000. So Elon explained that basically, if they had built that vehicle, they would sell about 14 of them to very, very few people and go out of business. So hence the decision to make the initial vehicle kind of a high-end vehicle in the form of the Model S. So we're sort of revisiting this history because obviously, in the case of Daimler, with the help of Tesla, they did do the smart car, as well as Tesla did the smart car battery, as well as there's an SUV or a van that was done between the two. And we deduced the fact that it looked like Tesla's unwillingness to give its basic battery technology all to Daimler in that van was one of the reasons that they broke up, even though it was Tesla batteries that were being used in that vehicle. So we're bringing all this up because a very interesting things occurred. Another component of the build process for the first round of SUVs and strategy that was developed by Daimler slash GM and others, even BMW in this case, as to why their CEO got fired, is that they came up with this idea, which was that batteries were simply a commodity that goes into the car. And so the idea here was that you could simply buy batteries anywhere in the world and then stuff them in large enough amounts to get the range you want, and everything would be fine. So the actual core plan included an idea which was, if Tesla built a giant factory to produce batteries, the fact that Daimler and others didn't own the batteries and simply had them produced in Korea by LG primarily was a perfect setup, because what would happen over time is the cost of batteries would fall dramatically, and Tesla gets stuck with the anvil in the form of a giant factory, but all the other major manufacturers could stay nimble and loose because they were not sort of hermetically attached to a giant factory that was now producing commodified products. So this has been a very interesting development. So the core logic is Tesla is really in trouble, or will be in trouble, because once global battery supply catches up, it's lights out for Tesla with all the extra costs they might incur. So one of our arguments had been, and is now being brought to light, the fact that if you have your own battery factory, there are all kinds of custom situations you can create, so that you could do different types of cars or size of pack, all kinds of flexibility that comes with having that factory. So on one hand, it's a drag because it does cost money to put it up. But on the other hand, you now have capabilities other people don't have. So we're in a very interesting situation now when it comes to Tesla, because the Gigafactory by itself produces as many batteries as the whole world combined. So not only do they have economies of scale advantage over competitors, they also have flexibility, but they also have access to inventory in ways others don't, which brings us to a look at what's going on at Daimler-Benz Mercedes. So what's happening there right now, according to reports we've seen in recent days, is that Daimler was only able to produce 7,000 of its EQC SUV last year. And so the goal is to have that number be 50,000 this year, but the holdup they're having is the fact that they're waiting on batteries from LG, and the battery supplies delivered last year were short of what they expected. So I was kind of sort of shocked, stunned by this, and hence why I chose to do this show today. And we've been doing a lot of stuff about the stock price of Tesla and would it be successful, et cetera. But I was very much looking forward to further coverage on what's going on with this whole area of batteries. So what basically came up is that, they're not revealing everything. Daimler is said to have built, for the second time in Chemnitz, Germany, a production facility there for batteries. So I was kind of surprised to hear that they were still relying on LG primarily. Daimler has also done deals, according to a report in 2018, they have a deal with SK, which is another manufacturer in Korea, to buy half their company and then redirect most of the future battery buys by Daimler-Benz Mercedes through that now 50% owned partner. And so we thought that we're now a year and a half perhaps after that contract was done. So we figured that there'd be a no-brainer that Daimler would be rolling, and Lutz had indicated that there are all these competitors that are delivering as many as 100 different models of EVs that would prove to be very competitive with Tesla. And the answer is it's kind of not worked out. So what we were concerned about or wondering about is that batteries is 50% of the vehicle cost when it comes to EVs. And so there's a business axiom that says that anytime one customer represents greater than 50% of your business, you're no longer that business, you're a subsidiary of your customer. So one of the arguments that we were having is that if the vehicle, 50% of the vehicle cost is going to one supplier, it's the supplier that now owns the people that it's supplying to, not vice versa. So in essence, LG is the power in that relationship. And I think the power is being illustrated here in terms of the battery shortage and how it affects. So this detail is starting to sort of play out in an interesting way because according to the report we just picked up, Daimler's going to have to pay as much as $1 billion in 2021 to make up for the fact that their average production, there's a certain goals that they have for pollution, and there's no way they could meet those goals without producing and selling a certain number of EVs. And so we're in an interesting position right now because Daimler is definitely going to miss its numbers based on a lot of reasons. In particular, they aren't selling enough EVs. But it's also going to introduce a very interesting prospect, which is that in the case of Fiat and the FCA, their partnership, they and General Motors are making payments to Tesla to offset some of the pollution that they have from their large SUVs. And this has enabled Tesla to add to its earnings, and we're going to find out what that number is that was delivered over the past year at the next quarter's earnings, but this will definitely influence Tesla's profitability. But it presents the prospect that Daimler will actually start having to pay Tesla as well, because it'll be cheaper for Daimler to be a part of a pool with Tesla, given the increase in sales that they're enjoying around the world, including in Europe, rather than having to make a large fine payment. And, we haven't seen that number hit yet, but one of the reports that we've seen is that there could be as many as $13 billion in fines. There's fines that are put out by the EU sort of over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think it would be a very interesting situation if you had multiple manufacturers not selling enough EVs approaching Tesla to be part of a pool and having to pay them for that privilege. I think would be a very sort of strange and interesting circumstance. But we do know that there's actually at least $1 billion coming to Tesla from the Fiat partnership. And then you have to add in the GM numbers to that as well. So the other thing that we were kind of intrigued, surprised by in this whole thing is the sort of large OEM, and that being all the companies that are LG customers. I thought it was pretty clear that LG would sort of run out of supply and would definitely have to limit how many batteries they could give to each of their customers, because they have something like 60% of all the manufacturers out there would be sort of focused on trying to get batteries from that partnership. So the other detail point that you may have seen that we're amazed by is that instead of GM choosing to use the money they got for selling GM Europe, they actually decided to go ahead and give that money back to shareholders, and that $2 billion is now what GM is using to go into partnership with LG to build a US-based battery plant. So the issue with these plants is that planning and execution seems to be in that 2 to 3 year time frame, unless you're in China. And one wonders if we're 3 years out from now, Tesla's going to be a lot bigger company moving a lot of product. And I'm wondering, how is this going to impact those big companies if they're delayed having to do a strategy shift at this point? They already don't have the sort of battery software technology to allow them to effectively compete with Tesla. So I would say stay tuned, because This is kind of a shock to see companies, with billions and billions and brilliant employees globally have a misfire of this sort and having not set up a plan B. Um, I'm getting a master's in cybersecurity right now, and there's a concept called single point of failure. And so for these folks to come up with this strategy plan and not have a second plan for how to effectively compete that at least at a small scale would be ready to be rolled out is kind of a shocker. But I think it reflects the fact that maybe it's hubris and that they're such a big company, they should be able to outthink the folks at Tesla in order to be successful. But as soon as we heard that GM was building this plant with LG and mirroring what Tesla's doing with Panasonic, I thought it showed that they're admitting that they made a mistake, which you never can do because that gets you fired in big corporations. The other thing I was kind of surprised by is I keep wondering whether Ford or GM are planning to go out of business. And the reason is as everything shifts towards the electric, to not have a well-funded plan for an electric move seems really strange given all the variables that are pushing them in that direction. There's all kinds of data, like Ford is down 15% in China, for example, that suggests that in China is an EV or electric-focused country right now. And the number of quality solutions coming from domestic manufacturers is really not that great. So I bring all this up because there's a huge problems here that are going on with some of the biggest companies in the world sort of jeopardizing their futures by how they're handling things. I guess my final note on this would be to watch what BMW has done. They fired their CEO and they have new products coming out, but I haven't seen any major factory built there to provide their batteries either. And I think they're relying on LG to be their solution as well. So I just think that I'm very surprised to see some of the biggest companies in the world sort of risk their future with very poorly developed solutions when it comes to electric. So this is sort of what we think is going to be a once a month, once every 2 month series where we're looking at the potential for Tesla to bankrupt a number of sort of giant companies out there that were in competition because they really didn't come up with a plan B that they could switch to in a fairly short period of time if plan A didn't work out. And so I can, on a daily basis, I keep being amazed at some of the things I'm hearing, seeing, including the fact that in Germany, I believe there's a coalition of the three big auto companies to actually put together some kind of a transportation service based on EV vehicles. And they've decided to purchase a number of Teslas to operate as the fleet for that entity. So, we're kind of shocked and amazed. And again, we'll keep you updated on this. But, it really looks to me that the problem right now is that the recovery opportunity that they need, they figured they could turn on a dime quickly, but it's completely not worked as they planned. And in fact, it's driving more sales towards Tesla in the process. So, the one last thing that I was sort of intrigued by on this whole thing was the fact that we're seeing in the case of VW, they've delivered the Taycan and it's selling and it does perform, but 100 miles light on range. And we've actually seen the e-tron on the road as well. But sales are tepid or not that large. And, it's one thing to say you're going to deliver a whole bunch of products. It's another thing to say customers are embracing them wholeheartedly. And I'd have to say that I really don't see that to be the case. And hence, I think it further bolsters the case that Tesla is in a great position and will do great as we move forward. At any rate, I'm happy to field questions at this point of the show. I typically let you guys have it out in terms of a dialogue. and then, sort of field question about the 20-minute mark before we close out. And we're happy to do so if any of you might have any questions about this or other items. Yes, everyone is hyper-focused on what's going to happen with earnings and how that's going to affect, as well as the update on where we're headed in China. I guess the one other thing I should add is that, wow, I'm starting to sort of get a feel for the coronavirus management process that's been going on. And I have to admit that I saw something 2 days ago and I was very surprised, which was as they were closing Wuhan, there are large numbers of people leaving the city or leaving the quarantine by every method possible. And that was kind of a shock because all those that have been quarantined, they're basically shipping people out of town who might have the disease. So now you have the problem of trying to find all the people that just slipped out of town into other places. And this could end up being very, very ugly. And the number of sort of people quarantined keeps increasing, trying to at least contain the spread of this disease. One of the pieces that we saw suggested it could take 2 years for a solution for this to be found. And, we'll see what happens with that. There's a question posed by Thaddeus regarding whether or not LG has expanded production. Absolutely. From our understanding, LG has expanded in Korea, but they've also started building plants in Poland and closer into other European OEMs so they could deliver from there. It obviously takes time to build those supplies or build those facilities out. And from what I'm seeing, the number of units that they were planning on produce is sort of starter numbers to grow to large numbers later. So I kept seeing 100,000 in terms of, there's a VW plant that was being built that I saw in Poland. Thanks, Josh. You're funny. Thanks. We're making an attempt to make some changes here and appreciate your indulgence and input on all the above. At any rate, we want to remind you our usual health tips. Don't forget, do you think the coronavirus will affect Tesla stock? Well, excellent question. I think that there's no doubt that it has the potential to, particularly if they have to stop, production stop now because it's a holiday there, and that was anticipated. I wanted to, this is kind of weird, but I wanted to invite you guys to do something kind of strange, which is take a look at some of the aerial footage of, you can look at the Tesla factory and see some numbers, but take a look at the aerial footage of the Shanghai plant and the stuff that's been produced. And what I found interesting there is that the cheapest model with no extra cost would be the white vehicle now. It used to be the black vehicle. And so what's interesting to me is that as you look from above, sort of noting the percentage of vehicles that are white versus other colors, and it's sort of illustrating the fact that people aren't just going for the cheapest model, they're adding features to both differentiate and enjoy their vehicles. So I would say that it has the potential to have an impact on Tesla. There's no doubt about that. I really think, though, that we're in a situation right now where, at least in outlying cities, there's a lot of business that's occurring. That's still the case. But the other thing that we were seeing is that, we were kind of seeing their long waiting list for the 3, and now the Y is coming out, and their long waiting list for that. And I just feel that, yes, it's going to affect business, but they have a large backlog of vehicles. And I think the delivery process in terms of ordering online and then having the vehicle delivered directly to your home or something of that sort would eliminate some of the issues that are being had. So I think that, it's not necessarily a product or service that needs to have a lot of human contact between seller and recipient. So I'm hopeful that that might be one of the saving graces of Tesla's process, where they don't have to have you come to the dealership. They could literally have, a truck pull up to your house, and you could have minimal contact with anyone if, in fact, the disease is spreading or virus is spreading heavily. So I think it is going to have some impact if it lasts a long time, but we're in the early stages, and I think it really depends on how pervasive it is. Yeah, the economic downturn could hurt traditional more than Tesla. Yeah, one of the things I find interesting is efficiency and just the fact that there are a lot of folks that are, wanting to, there are a lot of folks that are looking for the downturn and Tesla not doing well. I don't know if I agree with that because if you think about it, the reason there's no pollution out the back of the car is that electric is just more efficient in its burn. And so when you have a downturn, that's when people want more efficiency. There's a comment requesting, whether or not, that the domestic Korean firms are Tesla's nearest competitors. I think, that's logical, but, I just, sort of interviewed someone who was a Prius driver, and it has supercharging using LG battery packs for not the Prius, but the Nissan product, the Leaf. In its current iteration actually has supercharging. The problem is the battery range is still in that 125 to 150 zone, so that creates other problems. So it feels to me like LG is being egalitarian about it in terms of distributing their products to others, not just restricting it to best access to their domestic suppliers. So that's my take on that. What we're going to do is likely clip and paste your comments beneath and follow through in that fashion as we usually do. Very much look forward to your after show comments. Thanks for taking time out to join us. As you saw, our Model 3 put together here was our show, and this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks for joining us once again. Please take time to like and subscribe. We also want to encourage you to not eat within 2 hours of going to bed. Also encourage you to do 25 or so leg lifts per leg, and to ensure that you don't have knee issues. Once a week for fried foods reduces chances of health issues, and consider the 5-2 or some other diet that might be helpful in that way as well. Any rate, tschüss, German, au revoir, French, lahit rot, Hebrew, choda hafez, Farsi, hedge do, Swedish. No, this is actually Fremont, but they're using the same equipment in China. Also, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese. Hopefully this whole thing works out there as well. Thanks once again for joining us. Have a great day. Bye for now. And subjects you think we should cover as well would be appreciated. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we could use some help on Patreon as well. Have a great day. Bye for now.